I think it's relevant that again, if you could just explain the alternative strategy as well, Ian.
Certainly, through the Chair. So, as Letitia said, if we can secure a site just outside of the board, so in Onehunga, then that would be the main site for processing. But it would rely on, and it would make a really good mix if we could secure 2 smaller sites, potentially within the 3 local board areas. And they would be drop-off sites, so smaller, but community accessible sites, potentially run by community social enterprises. And so actually we're creating something quite unique that would work really well with almost a 2 or 3 site network. But it does rely on securing that main site, which it looks very hopeful at the moment. We're still working on this, and there's still a number of pieces of work. Just to add, although the land that we are looking at has potential contamination issues, mainly because they are either old waste sites or old landfill sites, they do lend themselves to actually fairly easy to cap and to actually to develop into waste sites in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm very uncomfortable about this, and I have to say I'm disappointed with the report. This has been going on for quite some time and has been discussed in this chamber several times before. The argument was made, and very forcefully, by Auckland Council Property Limited, and persuasively to the majority of governing body members, that the economic return was going to be so good that it was the best decision to sell it off. Now, I should correct myself using the term economic, and I guess Board Chair Chambers used it as well. It's really commercial. The commercial return was compelling. Economics, we don't know. We haven't actually had a report on the economics of community recycling and the value that adds to a community and the value that adds to our Auckland plan goals of livability. We haven't had that report at all. But suddenly the commercial aspects is out the back door, and it's going to be a church. So what's the common thread through all of this is that the local boards and their advisors' aspirations to have a community recycling centre here is being adamantly opposed for 2 widely different reasons. 2 widely different reasons, and that does disturb me. The other aspect that puzzles me is the planning aspect. Because it's in the mixed use zone, a community recycling centre is not appropriate. Hey, it was a works depot. It was a works depot. So that argument is not very convincing either. And I have to say, the only consistent argument around here has been from the local boards, and that's been for a community recycling centre. Not flogging it off on the market, making some money, not giving it as a church, and we know nothing about the church. Is this church a heritage building? What sort of congregation size does this church have? Is it getting high use? All of those effects of moving that church there have not been given in this report, and that is why I have to say I am very disappointed with the information being provided here. All we're getting is an argument, and it's a negative argument, but the argument keeps changing. The only thing consistent is they are opposing the community and the local board's aspirations for a recycling centre here. That's the only thing that's consistent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holtz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I hear the staff opposing this at all. I think I see a group of people who've worked exceedingly hard to help the local board achieve their aspirations. What they're bringing to us is a complex set of decisions that we need to weigh up and give a direction forward. So I think we need to just park the theories about staff. We asked for this information, it's being brought to us. What I see in this report is actually that the planning issues have come to the fore in Normanby Road. So I've got 2 questions relating to the planning issues. Our decision that we're being asked for today is really clear. There is an alternative site, and there's a site that seems to have not as many planning constraints, and that's been offered to the local boards plural, for the setup of this site. And I just want to ask some questions about Great North Road. Secondly, I hope we're not being asked to make a decision today about the church, because I think we're actually mixing a whole bunch of decisions. This is a disposal report, and I think the disposal report simply needs to focus on disposal or not disposal. I don't know where the discussion around the church comes from, but the idea of plonking a church on a site that is close to the CRL, can be used for quality compact housing development and a retail element in line with urban design that's envisaged in the Auckland plan. That's what we need to be seeing happen on Normanby Road, but I don't think that's for our discussion today. So I just need to clarify through you, the alternative site, can you just tell me where that's at? Because it's a little bit unclear in here, and somewhere there's something that says that the local board is not happy with the Great North Road site because they want to put Chinese gardens on it.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. The site in question is at 956 to 990 Great North Road. Now, the business case that Shale referred to considered two possible sites, and both were found from an operational perspective to be suitable for a community recycling centre. The Great North Road site is opposite Motat. It's formerly a site where...
I know where you are. Yep.
Yes. From our point of view, we thought it was a great site at the time.
Sorry, Letitia, just clarify, does everyone know where that site is?
The Horticultural Society.
Yes, Horticultural Society is there. There's been several failed restaurants which have operated there for several years. We thought at the time it would be an ideal site for a community recycling centre because it's opposite Motat, the zoo, Western Springs. It would form something of an educational hub. There's already natural barriers with the existing roading network around there. There's the motorway behind it. There's the road going to Motat across from it, so there's something of a barrier there that from a planning perspective it's already providing something of a buffer. In terms of value of land, because it's got an open space zoning, it was considerably cheaper, with I think the cost to council over a 20-year period was less than $1 million.
$850.
Yeah, $850,000 over a 20-year period to use that site, not including the actual construction of a resource recovery centre there, but there were two existing buildings, one of which could be used. However, it is a local park. It's joined by title to Chamberlain Park, so the motorway that's behind there, the Western Motorway, actually goes through the back, and that's divided the site in half essentially, or unevenly in half. And the Albert Eden Local Board, and I believe it was June this year, advised us that the site is no longer available. The Albert Eden Local Board do have decision-making authority in respect of this because they have governance over local parks. So due to that, the report just noted this because it was something that we were asked by the committee to go away and investigate, but I didn't spend a great deal of time focusing on the Great North Road site in the report because we had been advised by the Albert Eden Local Board it's no longer available.
Good.
However, I'll let Peter just respond because I think we're all quite interested as to the alternative views.
Thank you, not that I'm sure it's too pertinent. In fact, since we last discussed this with ACPL, the things have moved on further, and it may be that the Chinese Garden and Cultural Centre finishes up being located somewhere else, not too far from the Western Springs site that we're discussing here, but not on the actual Western Springs site, or indeed Chamberlain Park. So that's the story of the Chinese Garden over the last 7 or so years under Auckland Council. It's sort of rather peripatetic. But even assuming that the Chinese Garden doesn't land at Western Springs, that site was never, despite what Letitia just said, never actually seen as ideal for the full waste recovery centre. You'll recall we've always made the point that the Normanby Road site, which is industrial and zoned industrial and used industrial at the moment, was perfect for a waste recovery centre that included the heavy end stuff, the dirty stuff, the industrial stuff. The Western Spring site was always seen as something of a lesser waste recovery centre, although it had other advantages such as the possibility of an educational aspect to it that would tie in with the proximity of the MOTAT and the zoo and so on. So the Western Spring site on Great North Road was never actually seen as an optimal site, or even an acceptable site for a full waste recovery centre, because we are talking about the largest gap by far in the network that you have. The population of the Central Isthmus is, what, in excess of 400,000, and there's an awful lot of industrial type waste recovery that's needed, and the Western Spring site is simply not suitable for that, apart from some of the planning issues and so on that you would have on that site. So I hope that answers any further questions about that. And if I may, just earlier I said yes, Shale did a very good job at summing up the key points, but maybe it's worth just noting to focus the debate. As far as the waste recovery centre is concerned, the problem is that you're trying to do it on the cheap, and you know, we need a substantial, full-scale waste recovery centre somewhere on the isthmus, and that needs some budget. And you know, we might be able to squeeze it out of this transaction, maybe not. We'd be delighted if you could, but you know, you need to address that somewhere along the line. Thank you.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's really useful. So going back to the purpose of the report, I'm very happy with the recommendations, and as someone who's spending a lot of my time championing the setup of our local recycling centres, I'm very happy that recommendation B makes absolutely clear the partial proceeds of the sale of Normanby Road will be allocated towards the purchase of a suitable site, and I think that is utterly critical, that we don't lose track of that. We're looking for sites all around the region, and at the moment we're looking pretty hard out west, and believe you me, we would be very grateful for something as clear direction as this. But I go back to just a question around, is it delegation, or what is the process around putting the church on Normanby Road? Because I signal my unease about a church and a at-grade car park taking up a whole valuable housing site. That's maybe not for now.
Yep. No, I think that's totally relevant, because Councillor Lee brought up the same issue.
Yeah, I can speak to that. As you know, we're buying a large tract of Eden Terrace, and we're creating a real scarcity of land that's becoming apparent to us, and it's becoming apparent to businesses and people that are trying to relocate, families all trying to relocate but stay in the area, and that's one of the disadvantages of a public work. This is a bit unique in that the net outcome is actually quite neutral to council, in that once the CRL is built and the east-facing connections are covered back up, where we'll be trenching through the existing operation, there'll be a piece of council-owned land there of similar value. So I see it only as it's a unavailability of a piece of land in that area for the period of time that we're talking. I don't see it as a permanent loss to council. I'm agnostic about is that the right term? About the church. Personally, I come from a family of peasants who lived in the hills and worshipped in caves. So I think God's everywhere. There is a need to deal with carefully move businesses. We have consent obligations, designation conditions around working with businesses, trying to reduce effects on the community. And it's that quite a difficult balance of trying to solve this a bit of a puzzle where as you move one thing, you preclude something else. So we again, we've been patiently waiting for the outcome of this process, and I agree, it's about a disposal. It's not actually about putting the church there. It's about whether or not we can get next in line as another public work to put our hand up and say, look, we're running out of options. We think this is a great option because in exchange, we actually get that equal, well, I think it's a few hundred square meters less land, but land that's on Mount Eden Road in Shattuck at the moment. So it actually is quite a, the net outcome in time is actually quite neutral, in my view.
Perhaps we can keep the church on wheels.
And if I could just note, we have the recommendation for it to be disposed because it would be, Auckland Council would be acquiring the church's current site as one separate property transaction and disposing of, if this recommendation goes through, disposing of 27 Normanby Road under normal market terms and conditions to the church in question. I've kept the resolution quite general, specifically, so if something were to happen and the church were to decide they didn't need it, we wouldn't have to come back to this committee. We could continue going through with a normal commercial transaction. I do agree with you, though, it would have been an ideal site for an exemplar housing development, and that was always our preferred view, but simultaneously there are wider council objectives that we're trying to ensure happen as well.